I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before I do roll call, I'm going to read a electronic confirmation that is in the agenda. As a courtesy and a technology permitting, members of the public may participate virtually. However, the city cannot guarantee that the public access to teleconferencing technology will be uninterrupted, and technical difficulties may occur from time to time. Unless required by the Brown Act, meetings will continue despite technical difficulties for participants using the teleconferencing Zoom option. To watch or participate virtually in the City of Lafayette's public meetings and provide public comments, please take these steps. Watch or listen. Meetings are broadcast on the City of Lafayette's YouTube channel, which is listed in the agenda, the website, the URL. Join meetings remotely on the Zoom channel, which is also listed with the web ID, password, and telephone number. Submit comments before the meeting. Send an email to the project planner. Comments received by 12 p.m. on Monday before the hearing date will be included in the staff report packets. Comments and any graphic speakers wish to use as part of the public comment must be submitted by 12 p.m. on the hearing date. And material will be provided to the commission and made available to the commission and the public at the meeting. Live remote public comments. Technology permitting, members may submit live comments via Zoom using the link above. When commission invites public comments for the items to which you would like to comment, please use the raise hand feature, *9, if connecting by telephone, to notify staff. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to speak. Any graphic a speaker wishes to use as part of the public comments must be emailed to the project planner by 12 noon, the day of the meeting. I would like to do roll call now. Let's see. Where is my list? Here it is. Commissioner Sturm,
Present.
Commissioner Heising,
Present.
Vice Chair Radnich,
Present.
Commissioner Mason is excused, Chair Labange present. Can I get an adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Roll call vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we have any public comments for tonight, not on tonight's agenda?
We have no attendees by Zoom and thus no public comments by Zoom. So none at this time.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, consent calendar. We just have the draft meeting. Does anyone wish to remove any items from the consent calendar? Can I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar? If not,
So moved.
Second.
roll call vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We have no continued business. New public hearing. Staff, can you please present the accessory dwelling unit update, please?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Sonia Rzul. I'm Assistant Plan Director. I'm here tonight with Anatole, our Assistant Planner. We've prepared a staff report for you this evening to review the proposed amendments to the existing accessory dwelling unit ordinance to comply with state law and to also comply with a required program that was identified in our revised draft housing element presented to HCD. We have a PowerPoint presentation that'll take you through the staff report. I also wanted to acknowledge that the resolution was not included in the package, but if you would consider it, we could review the resolution tonight and just take you through the various paragraphs. So think about that, and if that's your choice, then we can do it that way. If not, we can continue it to another meeting in order to adopt the resolution. But Anatole is with us via Zoom, so you can see her there, and she can take us through the PowerPoint.
Yes, I would like permission to share if able. Thank you. This is a city-initiated zoning text amendment to update our ordinance that regulates additional dwelling units and junior additional dwelling units. My name is Anatole. I'm an assistant planner with the planning department. Thank you for having us here tonight. Just to briefly go over what will be covered in this presentation. There are a few changes to the existing ADU ordinance, which are material and will have maybe more significant changes or impacts. Many other revisions that are clarifications, new definitions, or codifications of programs that we already implement. And finally, there is a new program which is consistent with our revised draft housing element to allow an additional junior accessory dwelling unit, which is deed restricted or income restricted to low income. So that is what we'll be covering tonight. Under our existing framework, all ADUs are ministerial approvals. They are approved over the counter, essentially with a building permit or an ADU permit only. They do not require discretionary review by a hearing body. There are also no objective standards there are no objective standards applied to Class A or Class B. Class A is a specific guideline for a type of detached ADU that is up to 800 square feet in floor area and up to 16 feet in height. And again, it must be detached. A Class B ADU is converted from space that is within an existing or proposed residential building. You can also add up to 150 square feet to these types of units if needed in order to accommodate ingress or egress. So the difference between Class A and Class B is one is detached, one is converted. Both of these follow very standard requirements to be classified as a Class A or B. And then Class C are all ADUs that do not qualify or meet criteria to be called a Class A or B. These are generally larger ADUs up to 1,200 square feet or up to 17 feet in height, or some other combination of qualities that would not apply to a Class A or Class B. Class C ADUs do require an ADU application, and they are subject to objective development standards, but they are still reviewed and approved over the counter. A junior accessory dwelling unit is a specific type of ADU that is under 500 square feet and contained entirely within a existing or proposed space within a residential building. The maximum height for a Class A ADU, as already mentioned, is 16 feet. And the maximum height for a Class C ADU is up to 17 feet in height. Currently, we have a 50% reduction of our ADU development fees, and this will go through 2026. That is in addition to the state requirement that all ADUs under 750 square feet are not assessed any development impact fees by the city. This table is taken from an exhibit that was attached with the staff report. I apologize, I don't have the number at the top of my head of which attachment that was. This demonstrates what we currently do in our code and what is proposed to change. One clarification or new definition is regarding an efficiency kitchen as it's defined for a junior ADU. Currently, our code requires a minimum amount of surface area of countertop and a minimum amount of area for storage cabinets. Consistent with state requirements, the city or staff proposes the language to require countertops and storage cabinets that are of reasonable size in relation to the JADU. And again, this is consistent with state language in state ADU law. The definition of a JADU has been clarified as well by the state. The updated definition is to include an attached garage in the definition of single-family dwelling space. So you may convert part or all of an attached garage that is attached to a single-family dwelling. There's also new language for how shared bathrooms can work if a junior ADU does not have its own sanitation facilities. It must have interior access to shared facilities, as well as the exterior access, which is separate from that. There were some clarifications as well coming from the state on process and timing. Currently, our code does not specify a process for denial of an ADU, though we follow the state requirement. Now that is codified in the proposed revised ADU ordinance, where detailed comments must be provided to an applicant within 60 days of receiving a complete application, which describes specific steps the applicant must take to bring their application into compliance. Additionally, a permit for the demolition of existing space to replace it with an ADU must also be reviewed concurrently. This is, again, a practice that we already implement, now is codified in our ordinance. Likely the largest change coming from state law is updated height maximums. We already discussed what the current height maximum is for ADUs on single-family residential. There also are ADUs permitted on multifamily residential lots. So the current code for that is that they shall not exceed the height of the primary unit or the maximum height of the underlying zoning district, whichever is less. Now, the proposed ordinance incorporates the state code and allows up to 18 feet for an ADU, a detached ADU on a single family or multifamily residential lot if it is within a half mile to BART. This is defined more broadly in the state code as a high quality transit stop or corridor. The only public transit in the city of Lafayette that qualifies under that state definition of high quality transit corridor is the BART station. In these cases, within a half mile to the BART station, an ADU can go an additional 2 feet taller if it is needed to match the pitch of the existing residential roof pitch. So that is why here it reads 18 or up to 20 feet. So that is only if you're increasing the height in order to match the existing pitch of the primary residence. The height limit has also been updated to 18 feet for ADUs for detached ADUs on a lot with multifamily residence. If that multifamily residence, existing or proposed, has at least 1 story above grade or more than 1 story above grade is how it's worded. Finally, ADUs that are attached to a primary dwelling can be up to 25 feet. Again, broader state code stipulates these types of attached ADUs can be up to 25 feet or the maximum of the underlying zoning district, whichever is less. 25 feet in all cases is the lesser number, which is why we use just 25 feet. Continuing on the table of changes, our current code requires ADUs created before 2020 to be subject to an owner occupancy requirement that at least one of the lots or one of the units on the lot shall be owner occupied. Current code does not require owner occupancy for ADUs up to 2025. Now, the owner occupancy requirement for regular ADUs has been eliminated completely. All junior ADUs remain subject to owner occupancy requirements. This is per state ADU law. The definition for converted ADUs on multifamily properties has been clarified. Generally, this doesn't change the number of ADUs that are permitted on a multifamily lot. It just clarifies how they are calculated. And when you take 25% of the existing number of dwelling units, that is rounded up to get to the final number of ADUs that are permitted. Regarding number of bedrooms, our current code sets a maximum of 2 bedrooms. Moving forward, there will be no language related to maximum number of bedrooms in our code, so there will be no maximum number of bedrooms in an ADU. This is coming from state code. ADU law already requires cities to disregard nonconformities when approving an ADU. We cannot take into consideration existing building code violations. And this is further clarified in the new updates that we cannot deny an ADU application if there is an unrelated zoning or building code violation and the ADU does not present a public health threat. It also clarifies that the city may not deny a permit to legalize an existing unpermitted ADU, which violates building standards, if it was constructed before January 2018. So this essentially makes it simpler for existing non-conforming ADUs to be legalized. Finally, the one program of this ADU update, which is city initiated and not following state guidance or requirements, is to allow a second junior accessory dwelling unit. Currently, that is not permitted. You can have 1 junior ADU and 1 ADU on a single family property. But this program of the revised draft housing element for affirmatively furthering fair housing would allow a property owner to construct or convert a second junior accessory dwelling unit if they put a deed restriction in place to keep that unit available to low or very low income households for a set period of time, 5 or 10 years. Staff received 1 public comment prior to the deadline that was today at noon, the day of the hearing, which was provided to planning commissioners ahead of this meeting and uploaded to the agenda as an additional public comment received. So that was published to the public agenda this afternoon. In response to the comment on development standards for Class C ADUs regarding architectural standards, staff offer a potential alternate language very similar to what is existing, but we feel this will address the comment made regarding an ADU's exterior materials being consistent with the main residence. This only applies to Class C ADUs because Class A and B are not held to the development standards like Class C. Second, an additional clarification regarding height and the way it is currently worded in the revised draft. Wanted to note that this language may need to be revised for clarity as we continue reviewing the final ordinance language with city attorney's office. But I wanted to clarify and point out that the city currently allows Class C ADUs up to 17 feet and will continue to allow Class C ADUs up to that height. That is, unless they meet, any criteria for that higher height limit previously mentioned under state law. Staff recommendation is to find the ordinance statutorily exempt from CEQA, find it compliant with state law and with the general plan as amended by the revised draft housing element, which was submitted to HCD on May 13th, 2024, and adopt resolution 2024-08, recommending the city council's approval of the ordinance. That concludes my presentation. I open to Sonia or Greg for any additional staff comments, and I'm available for questions as well from the commission.
Any clarifying questions from commission?
Just a quick question on the half-mile radius. Is it only from the BART station? Why wouldn't the bus route on Mount Diablo, since that's a main corridor and spine through the city, why wouldn't that be a half-mile from that corridor along the whole city? But I heard in the presentation it was only around the BART station.
Yeah, the proximity to the BART station or any other public transit comes into play in two ways in our ordinance. One, when we're considering additional height, then it's a stricter standard. It is high quality transit. That the only thing that qualifies, as Anna said, was BART.
Okay.
When we are taking it into consideration for parking requirements, it's a lot more flexible. That just says public transit. That's what our ordinance says. So we take into consideration those two different scenarios. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves why one is more stricter than the other. One is for parking requirements and one is for increased height allowances.
So BART's considered high quality and the bus routes aren't.
They're not.
Okay,
Just
thank you.
public transit. And over time, as ADU laws have evolved, they've become more and more relaxed. So when we first started applying ADU laws, public transit was actually defined in that higher standard. And then over time, public transit has been a lot more flexible and it's just a bus stop, for example.
Any other comments?
I have a few questions. On the low income, very low income, sort of additional ADU, how do we verify and enforce that?
So we would follow the similar approach that we use right now for below market rate units. The state sets those standards every year. We follow those standards. They set based on household size. The state publishes those income limits for households. So typically we look at tax filing, information about income, savings accounts, check-ins accounts, investment accounts. We look at all that information, but essentially we're looking at their income documentation to verify that they meet the state standards for low and very low, depending on household size.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And then on the deed restrictions, how did we determine the appropriate length of time for those? Are there sort of caps on what you can do or?
Do you have anything? I was just gonna go on the program. Do you have anything?
So you're asking with respect to allowing the second JDU, the term of that is simply a matter of policy. And so the revised housing element included 5 or 10 years for lower income. And so if the unit is the lowest income level, so very low income, that is a bigger burden or to amortize. And so a shorter time frame restriction is appropriate than if it is for low income, which is a higher income level. But that it's a policy decision. So those terms could be longer. It could be 10 and 20 years. Considering the novelty of the program, we haven't seen it implemented yet or extensive use of it. And so I think the council in the revised housing element was seeking to essentially incentivize that, and 5 years and 10 years are relatively modest overall for below market rate income deed restricted units. But it would afford the property owner that additional unit. So it's simply a matter of policy.
Consistency. Okay.
Do you mind, can I ask just a follow on to that? So for the city proposed text amendment for the 2J ADUs, is that 2J ADUs in addition to one ADU, or is that giving you the option of one ADU and 2J ADUs? I don't know if I said that the right way.
The latter.
In the end, a property could have a primary dwelling unit, an accessory dwelling unit, and 2 junior accessory dwelling units, one of which is deed restricted.
Okay, so the second one would need to be. And in a JADU, those are reserved for family? Or no?
No. There is
I thought I thought in the table,
correct.
Shared.
Owner occupancy is a requirement for one of the units if one of the units is a JDU. So let's take the example of just a primary dwelling unit and a JDU. One or the other of the units has to be owner occupied by the owner of the property. Could be the primary unit or it could be the junior unit. So that would
oh,
remain the case even with the addition of an ADU or the addition of a second JDU.
okay, and with the JADU, I thought I understood from the table as being shared that you can share restroom facilities with the primary unit. So could both JADUs, including the deed restricted non-family member or non-owner occupied unit, all the primary and the 2 JADUs could all share the same restroom facilities? Then what happens if the primary owner sells the unit, sells their property, and you're still deed restricted for the 5 years? Does the low income occupant get to stay, or is that all terms that they figure out on their end, but they still get to use? How does that work?
Yes, the occupant, I believe, would be able, let's say that the owner occupies the primary unit and rents out the 2 JDUs. The deed restriction runs with the land. So even if the property sells, the deed restriction runs for the term prescribed. I would imagine that the rental agreement executed, I mean, unless it's a month to month where, and now it is a expanding and changing regulatory environment around being able to evict someone. So if that presented, we could look further into it, but I believe that renter can be able to continue to rent from the new owner.
Okay, then my last follow-up on the JADUs is, as a new owner, let's just say I bought the property as a new owner, if the existing leases were all cleared and there were no occupants at the time of my purchase, but it was still deed restricted, could I choose to just not occupy either of the JADUs on my own property? Or if it's deed restricted, do I have to have a renter for the low income JADU?
You could choose not to rent any of the units on your property.
Okay, thank you.
That is true of a primary unit, an ADU, a JDU. Owners have that decision-making authority whether and when to rent or not.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Stern.
And this might be a silly question, but there's nothing precluding an owner from occupying themselves, the ADU, like enrolling it into their primary residence? The JADU,
Correct.
yeah, all right. Okay. think my only other question was on the section 566 that was creating a objective standard to help any what attached ADU, JADU match the existing residence. Did you all look at whether like I'm questioning whether like it needs to be exactly the same because we have residences where they use a variety of, materials and things like that. Did you all look at that? Is there a reason why you chose to go with the current wording?
The current wording is actually very, very close to what we have already. It was a very small refinement that we think would, it doesn't fundamentally change the intent or the spirit of what we're trying to do there. We think it would, if someone were to challenge it, we think that small refinement and wording would still be the same. We're trying to get closer to an objective or a non-discretionary word choice. So we essentially, if you read them, they're actually almost identical, but it was recommended that we explore that option of using a slightly different word choice. And again, trying to get away from anything that sounds discretionary around styles and things like that. But we typically look at that now, and we, even if they're not identical, at least they should. Right now, we say the same, whatever that means. We try to be very
Did that
practical
section apply to only attached ADUs or detached as well?
detached as well.
Okay. I feel like I've seen properties where, it's maybe a similar material, but a different color or
Yeah, I
there's
think,
something slightly different that's still sort of
yeah,
is
I
in
think there's a
harmony.
practical side as well. We look at it and we make sure that it's consistent and that it looks like it belongs in the same property, for example. But what the ordinance says makes it very objective as we can.
Okay, thank you.
The only questions I had, could you go back to the slide that had the A, B, and C definition of ADU? I just wanted to get straight in my head.
One moment. Class A is always detached, always up to 800 square feet and up to 16 feet in height. So anything larger than that would be bumped up to a Class C. And then also Class B is always, the way I like to describe it is that it's always converted from existing or proposed space. So you're taking space from an existing garage, outbuilding, basement, room in a house, and turning that into its own independent unit, living facilities.
Why does it say on B then converted from existing or proposed?
Guys.
The proposed part messes me up because that sounds like you're adding. So you're adding to your building and then you're gonna subdivide part of that for that one? Okay, and maybe then the slide you had before this with the nice 6 pictures of different, do those all line up with an A, B, or C or J ADU?
These are different examples of ADUs. For example, the upper left would likely be a Class A as long as it's under 800 square feet, under 16 feet height. Attached ADUs are generally seen categorized under Class C. Interior basement or an interior converted garage. Those are examples of Class B. So there are many different ways to build an accessory unit on a property. Some examples are, these are just some examples.
Okay, and then the last part of that is, so in B, it's only up to 150 feet, right?
For a Class B, we're really looking at you're converting existing space within a residence, or a future residence that hasn't been built yet. So if you have an existing residence and you want to convert a portion of that residence to an ADU, but you find it difficult to provide independent exterior access, which is required for Class B ADU, and you need to build out some kind of passageway or entry area to accommodate that independent exterior access, you can add up to 150 square feet to provide that ingress and egress. So it's not just any type of space added to a Class B for that 150 square feet.
Okay, that makes sense. But then that one would still cap out at 800, no more than 800, right?
Nope, with Class B, there is not really a minimum for the amount of space that you can convert to a ADU. With Class C, if you are getting into a converted or semi-converted conversion, the floor area is capped at 50% of the main residence. So you can't have an ADU that's larger than 50% of the main residence if it's an attached or converted Class C.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else have any questions? All right, we don't have an applicant, so do we have any public comment on this?
Looking. We do not.
All righty. If there aren't any more planning commissioner comments, may I have a motion?
So I'm willing to make a motion, but I just want to highlight, which is in the staff report, and highlight for anyone listening, if there's anyone listening, that these updates are required by state law as written in the staff report, and Assembly Bill 2221 and Senate Bill 897, which amend various government codes, is the reason why staff is bringing this before us. So with that comment, I will make a motion that we,
I can pull up the screen with the
Alright.
motion on it if you'd like.
yeah,
I had a couple, I just had two like wording things on the code section.
Okay,
You
hold
I
on.
want-
can amend your
want me to
motion.
make a motion and then you amend it? Or
Let's do it first.
let's do a
Okay.
friendly amendment in process.
On page 3 of Exhibit A, I just thought it was a little confusing on number 4 and 6 under section P, the protected tree. The wording seemed, I think maybe like where it's undeveloped property and restricted ridgeline area. If we're talking about trees in that vicinity, like it needs to be worded differently. 'Cause it looks like, to me, unless I'm not understanding this, it looks like you're sort of expecting the definition to be of undeveloped property and restricted ridgeline area
You're talking number 4.
in 6
4, right?
and 6.
Four.
P 4 and 6.
And could you bring up on screen attachment A, which is a draft revised
Page 3.
ordinance?
Are you able to see that?
Mm.
We can
I'm
see
gonna
it, but
zoom in a
Okay,
little
I
bit.
will, I'll zoom in as long as you can, we have the document up.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Thank you. So this is P 4 and 6 under definitions, is that correct?
Yes,
Correct.
page 3 of Exhibit A.
We have undeveloped property and restricted ridgeline.
Yes.
This refers to when a property is vacant. Any species of tree with a diameter of 6 inches or more is considered protected. And on a property that is subject to a protected or restricted ridgeline, any native tree of any size or species within that restricted ridgeline is a protected species.
Okay. Um.
And these are directly drawn from the city's tree protection ordinance, correct?
Yes, and these aren't proposed to change from the existing to the new updated ADU ordinance.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with like the content. I just, when I was scanning down it says riparian tree, replacement tree. I would sort of, maybe this is just not the writing style of the code, but I would expect it to say like tree within an undeveloped property or something to you're clear. But it's fine. If this is consistent, I mean, I did scan through this. If this is consistent with sort of the style of writing of similar sections, then I'm fine with it.
Okay, I see your point. I think they can, just because it's under the tree ordinance, I think they'll get.
Figure it out. Okay.
All right, any other comments?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Motion, if we have one?
Yeah, so I'll continue making the motion and I'm not, the only thing we need to do is, can you show us on the screen the resolution that wasn't attached to the staff report and scroll through it so we
Mhm.
can see it before I make the motion?
So the findings, which are made in adopting a zoning code or zoning text amendment, is the commission shall find that the change proposed is consistent with the general plan and each element of it. Staff find that the following programs of the housing element or revised draft housing element, excuse me, relate to ADU housing. The AFFH Action 2.4 to allow a second junior ADU. Program H-63B, ADU monitoring to review and update the existing ADU ordinance for conformance with regulatory updates. That is exactly what we are doing now. And finally, program H-63D related to ADU fee reductions. This is designed to promote the development of ADUs. And we currently have reduced development impact fees. I apologize for the background noise. The second finding that the commission shall make is in the case of a general land use regulation, the proposed change is compatible with the uses authorized in and the regulations prescribed for the land use district for which it is proposed, and with the regulations for other land use districts. So existing zoning regulations prescribe ADU development standards and compliance within this section of the code, chapter 6-5. And the revisions that are proposed in the updated ordinance do not affect or conflict with any other allowable uses or purposes of other land use districts. That is the finding staff made. Finally, the third finding required is a community need is demonstrated for the change proposed. Failure to comply with the state government code sections that regulate a city's implementation of ADU law could render the city's ordinance null and void, which would thereby limit our ability to apply the very few default or development standards that we have in our code. Therefore, implementing the proposed amendments to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance will ensure legal compliance while also allowing Lafayette to achieve the community goals that are set forth. Those are the findings that must be made A, B, and C by the Planning Commission, and those are the description that staff have provided.
Great, thanks for that. So with that, and I can make all the findings, by the way, or I wouldn't be making the motion.
It's up there too.
What?
Oh, if you want.
Oh, there it is. I got it here too. I make a motion, I move that we find the revised ADU regulations statutorily exempt from CEQA and consistent with state law and within the Lafayette General Plan, and propose we adopt resolution 2024-8 and forward a recommendation for adoption to the city council.
A second?
Can I ask a clarifying? Does your motion include the two adjusted text changes that were shown on the screen that came in after?
Yes, it does. Thank you for that.
Cool. I just want to make sure.
So do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. And then, other business, ARC volunteer for next Friday. Vice Chair,
I can do it.
okay, Vice Chair Radnich. Commissioners report? Anyone? Planning Director's report?
I just wanted to thank the commission for its participation in last Monday night's joint meeting with the city council on the tree protection ordinance update. We felt it went very well and are busy drafting the actual ordinance revisions, which we will bring to you in short order. And we continue lots of work in the background on a multitude of projects. But nothing of note this evening.
What's the timeline with filling the other seats here?
So there are currently 2 vacancies and we do have 2 candidates. So this week we'll be scheduling candidate interviews probably for the next week or the week following. So we do have a sufficient number of candidates to fill the seats if appropriate.
Great. All right, well, I think we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.